for garages and servicing, I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker, who is Stephen Scofield from the IMI. Stephen is a member of the senior management team at the IMI and has a great deal of experience in qualifications development over some 15-20 years, and also a lot of experience in developing standards both for organisations with whom the IMI works in the United Kingdom but also in other territories around the world. So still on this subject, Steve's going to talk about certifications and standards. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Herbert. We're good? Okay. We're good? Okay. Many thanks for receiving me today. I look forward to giving you 30 minutes quick overview and hopefully some insights as the UAE and the wider region starts to look at standards, and those standards ultimately will include people. So we're very interested in that piece. So I'm delighted to share with you some best practice, some insights that we've gained from around the world, working with different governments, different OEMs, different trade organisations, and certainly anyone that's involved in standards development. So thank you for the opportunity. A little bit about the IMI. We was established in 1920, so we've been around a few years. So we're fully embedded in the sector. We have a unique offer for the automotive industry. We are the only professional body that sets professional standards on a global basis. We're passionate about sharing our findings and our experience on a worldwide basis. So we're very much a not-for-profit organisation, but looking to help governments, organisations and the whole sector to try and be the best they can be. And working with governments and the automotive sector at local level, we're very much looking to address skills gaps, which we find a major issue when we start talking about industry standards. We do this in a collaborative way, so together we like driving up standards in partnership. Our international goals: globally enabling people and businesses to reach their full potential. We're here to add value, not just to hang on. And we are the authoritative voice on skills and hopefully helping you facilitate a world-class automotive workforce. So very much people orientated. I guess the challenge for us all, I'm hearing from colleagues around the room, new standards are coming to the UAE, to the region, and very much we all have the same challenges, and we see that in many markets. So some of them challenges, finding strategies, whether that's governments looking at them, whether it's the industry itself, finding automotive strategies which are enablers for economic and business growth is critical to the stakeholders involved. Provide continued improved customer protection and confidence. That's what the standards are about, you're hearing about today. So governments need that front of mind, and we need to find strategies that work for all. And preparing the sector for tomorrow is very much in the offering here. We've heard about some technology. Herbert made a good overview of what's going on in the sector. We can all see it coming, but the sector needs to be prepared for that, and I'd like to explore that with you in some detail. So, how can garage standards, a hot topic in Dubai, a hot topic in the region, how can they help? Well, let's just explore that for a moment. What we find with industry standards, and I've been very lucky personally to work over the last 12 years on different industry standards, and providing a framework for business and economic success is a critical component here. So these standards, whatever they look like, have to be designed to do certain jobs. And if we think about some of the critical areas that any standard that comes out in the region ought to do, we should always have the customer, the consumer, front of mind. This is about consumer protection. It needs to be front of mind for governments. It needs to be front of mind for the sector. And we need to look at driving customer confidence through pieces like this. So standards are very important. The consumer is king from a customer perspective, but we collectively, governments, trade bodies, people like the IMI, the corporate responsibility we have to the consumer is absolutely an imperative here. So it would always, or should always, in our opinion, feature in these standards we're talking about today. Very close to our hearts, there's a core thread runs through most standards that we work with governments and different industry bodies in the globe, across the globe, and skilled, educated, professional workforce is absolutely key. I guess many of you work in business, you'd recognise this piece. Attracting, recruiting, developing and retaining talent is one of our biggest challenges, whether that's on a country basis, whether that's on a business basis, or right down into the nuts and bolts in a small garage. Absolutely key. So standards in skills are really important. If we've got standards, we can attract talent. If we've got career paths, we can attract talent. If we've got true professionalism in the sector, we can attract talent. And it's a key element of our work. Staying ahead of advancing and new emerging technologies is another challenge for the people piece. Technicians need to stay ahead, and we all too often find they don't. And accurate inspection and diagnosis is also one of the big challenges. So as we've worked around the globe, we often find that these two core elements are critical to successful standards implementation. Delivering on the customer experience. Not so long ago we only talked in dealer world around CSI, but that whole journey is changing. The customer experience starts way before they walk through the garage doors nowadays. First time fix is all a part of being effective as a business, so it doesn't matter whether we're employing 4,000 people or 3. First time fix is key to that customer experience. Meeting customer expectations as a whole. So what does that look like? Customer retention, critical to business success. It's much easier to retain a customer than go and find a new one. And the changing retail environment. The world is changing. Generation Z don't do business the way we used to. So there's a real big dynamic around that customer journey and experience that we need to consider and make workable in any standard that we develop as a sector. We've already heard a bit about quality parts, materials and equipment. Paramount, again, to all of the things we just spoke about: customer protection, skilled and educated workforce, delivering on the customer experience. So safe maintenance and repair needs to be at the heart of what we are trying to achieve here in the region with new standards. And minimise rework and complaints. Those complaints come at multiple levels. I know we've got some government officials in the audience today, and the consumer will complain at multiple levels. So in the workshop, in the small garage, right the way up to government department level. So really, the framework for any standard has got a big job to do. It's a challenge, and we're very lucky that we've worked in this arena for a long time, and hopefully after the presentation it will generate some thoughts and give some insights. So what does an effective strategy look like? An industry standard, what does it look like? How do we get there? Well, there's some imperatives here. The standard must provide solutions for all stakeholders. We've heard it just now. Are OEMs involved? Is it just garages? Are the parts factors involved? Is used cars involved? So it's really got to pick up the whole piece. The consumer, we've already said, it's about consumer protection. Absolutely critical. It needs to work for governments, and both of those two segments that have got a stake in this piece are really usually keen to have one standard. The consumer gets very confused if the sector puts out multiple standards. So there's a piece of learning that we found in other markets. Governments also need to get the message across with the sector. So one common standard is a much easier sell to consumers, easier communication for governments and the sector. Businesses, absolutely a key component of their business environment. Any standard, so they must be involved, and that's at every level. Staff, actually here's our opportunity with our staff, as we said earlier. Attracting staff, a standard can do that. But it also needs to measure the staff, it needs to give them value so they can see they're progressing, they can see they're of value to the business or to the country. And B2B, we mustn't ever forget that. So we have a lot of activity goes on in the garage world that's about business-to-business activity, whether that's the insurers, working with body shops, whether that's fleet, looking for maintenance and service from garages large and small. So there's quite a lot of stakeholders there. All of that must be considered, and we know that from the best practice we've seen around the world, if you include all of them stakeholders, we're in a good place. So industry leadership is important from the start. If your standard, whichever that one looks like, and I know we've got colleagues in the room talking about new standards coming, the industry needs to take the lead from the start. Thought leadership. Employers need to be in the driving seat. Guess what? If they're in the driving seat, we get a workable standard. If we don't engage employers at every level, we have a problem. Government support, as we've just heard here, is critical. To sponsor these sorts of programs of work, if we haven't got total government support, failure is inevitable. So again, this is a partnership approach. Effective steering groups and expert working groups. In my 12 years at the IMI, I've run many of these industry steering groups at a very high level, and if you get this right, it works. But what it must be is inclusive. So you need the right people on the steering groups that are strategic in their thinking. The expert working groups absolutely must understand the day job so that we get the workabilities in standards. And then inclusivity, wider consultation to make sure you've got that workability is an imperative again. As I said earlier, one solution consumers, employers can understand is the way forward from what we've seen from success around the globe. Some global insights from the IMI. People are always at the core. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about government, economic policy and standards, business needs, driving efficiencies, developing talent, succession planning, all those critical business needs. Competent staff delivering outstanding customer experience to grow the business, retain the business and be successful. People in all of these standards always play a part. So whatever the challenge, skills and competence are always at the core. Whether it's driving customer experience, whether it's vehicle inspections, identifying repair methods. It isn't just about making a repair. Identify the correct method. That's skills and competence that's needed to do that. Repair techniques. Once you've identified the repair type of method, it's imperative you use the right techniques. You look at some of the technology that's sitting out there in the halls today. As Herbert said earlier, some of the composites, if they're not repaired right, we have an unsafe repair. Parts selection, absolutely critical. Getting back to the consumer again, if we haven't got the skills and competence to recognise when to change, when to repair, what type of parts are appropriate for that repair, then we've got another problem. Skills and competence is about safety. We'll hear a lot about that today, I'm sure. But actually, it still comes back to the skills of the managers to make sure the environment's right, the technicians, making sure that they're operating safely, and ultimately that comes back to the consumer. If the finished repair is not where it needs to be, then safety is an issue for the consumer. And we mustn't forget equipment. We are at the Auto Mechanica show after all, and using the right equipment also ensures that we get safe repair. And again, if you're not skilled in the use of that equipment or skilled in identifying which is appropriate from a garage standard, then we've got a problem. So I hope you can see we kind of believe, our belief is skills, competence, professionalism is at the centre of every good business and every good standard. If we just take you on a journey, this is another little bit of insight that we've found around the world. We tend to start with the end in mind. So any standard that's got skills in it, it has to start with industry, globally recognised professional standards. And at the IMI we're very lucky that we've got that. We have 300 qualifications that covers every job function in the sector, accreditations and professional standards and codes of conduct that get us to that piece. But we're under no illusions. You go to an emerging market or a rapidly growing market, they're always on a journey. So we try and support that. This is something we often see missing from standards development and people development. Understanding the needs, doing the needs analysis first. Often we're trained to, we even see this in OEMs, often they're just training for training's sake. There's good training programs, but they're not necessarily training to the gap. That's the quickest route to turning a technician off, training them on something they already know. It's the quickest way of getting rid of a lot of money in wasted development. So we try and help our partners develop and close the skills gaps. So this is about using our efforts where they're really needed, and we can prioritise on that. So the standards that we develop here for garages, absolutely, when we're talking about the skills piece, it is not just about training, it's about how we go about doing that effectively. It's a big change for the sector, and we've got to get them efficiencies to be able to make it work. And certificates and achievement. Certificates for us are part of that career journey, but they're also, from a government perspective, evidence of knowledge and competence and skills. So they're a critical part of any standard to get that recognition. But what's that mean for the consumer? Well, we have professional registration at the back of that. We believe it doesn't stop at being qualified. The IMI truly believes that recognition of professionalism is absolutely key, because a professional will keep coming back, keep training more, growing to the next level, whether we're in leadership or whether we're a technician. And the professional register opens that up to consumers, so they can see where the good businesses are, where they can see where the qualified technicians are. They can also then use this for audit purposes. So if government departments want to see that the people are qualified, then we've got a mechanism for that. Quite a journey, and every country, every organisation will be in a different place. So how do we quality assure that? We have quality assurance systems that are second to none. We are the world's leading awarding body in automotive, and we have quality assurance teams that make sure the skills piece works in any standard. So it doesn't matter whether we're talking about an OEM standard that's global. If there's skills, qualifications and competence involved, we can quality assure that. If it's a new garage standard in this region, then we can quality assure that. Again, everything we do is in partnership. So we very much look to work with governments, government departments, businesses, large and small, independent and franchised. So that's kind of the journey we think you're going to face with the garage standard from a people perspective. I'll just put a couple of examples that we've picked up from around the world. I'll just run through these fairly quickly because I'm mindful I've got a 20-minute slot here. Accident repair standard. This was, it's been around for about 7 years, and this was a standard designed to deliver safe repair, and it facilitated a massive positive impact. So this is an industry standard, not dissimilar to you're talking about today. Significant increase in safe repair is what it's driven. Appropriate materials and equipment utilised, making the repair right. In this particular instance, vehicle damage assessors that did the estimates for the body shops were unskilled. And actually, when we put the best the industry had forward, only 20% passed the critical competencies needed to do the job. So the sector was in a bad way. These people might write millions of pounds worth of business, and they wasn't getting it right. Unsafe repair. So standards are really important, but the people bit, it really counts. So a good impact there. 1,200 now registered professionals, fully trained, doing the job right, continually developing their skills as technology moves on, accredited by the IMI. Over 10,000 technicians upskilled. That's not a bad piece. And in a sector that never used to train. So you can see the power of these standards if we get them right. I know very often as employers, as I've been one of those, both SME and working in the OEM sector, often we see standards as a bureaucratic piece, but actually they're powerful tools and they're a good business ally if we get it right. And what this drove for this particular group of people was a culture of continual training and development, and that's what we call true professionalism. We covered this with a return on investment study just to prove the concept, and the feedback was enormous. All of the training had a massive business impact. So we have a return on investment arm to the IMI run by Dr. Paul Spear, and we proved it. So the highest level return on investment study actually proved the point. A second example, this is brand new to the UK market, and vehicle testing is changing for the UK market. To become an approved vehicle tester, we have around 60,000, 58,000 technicians. This new standard that's been developed by the UK government says you must have a technical level 3. You're working on vehicles, you'd expect that, wouldn't you? So that's the starting place. But actually they're doing a specialist job, vehicle inspection. So what we've put in place is MOT test training, that's a 3-day course, and a small qualification that sits behind it. So what we've got here is the competence, the knowledge around the vehicle, but then the actual job that we're undertaking in the garage. And then the DVSA will actually observe that particular MOT tester. That's quite a rigorous way in to work in a garage doing vehicle inspection. And it doesn't stop there, that continuous development keeps going. Retaining status as a vehicle tester will now mean mandated CPD. Why wouldn't you do that? Technology's moving on, the standards move on. Vehicle testing standards, as the technology takes over, has to shift. And we have CPD modules in that, breachable stuff that doesn't interfere with the employer. So those CPD modules can be online, they can be a raft of different solutions, but they're mandated. And then we have an annual assessment. Again, this is online, so we don't have downtime from the place of work. But this is quite a rigorous standard. This is without talking about what the rest of the standard looks like. This is just the people part. And to become a testing station manager, before you could have been anyone walked in off the street, now you have to be qualified. So you can see standards are hotting up, technology moves on, and government regulation moves with it. The impact of this is what we're expecting to see. So what improvements does this do? It improves vehicle inspection decisions, a major issue, and the complaints that come back to government departments about that are horrendous. Improved customer and government confidence is what this will drive. Reduce consumer complaints at every level, like we spoke about earlier. But from the skills piece, greater engagement with relevant training and development from SMEs, independents that don't train today. 80,000 technicians and managers are expected to be upskilled in the next 3 years. That's a powerful standard. It's going to work for the sector. 5,000 newly qualified testers per year will become instantly more employable because they've got the qualifications. And we already know that the garages are saying They know they'll get productivity. They've looked at our return on investment studies for other similar products. So we're in a good place. That's the power of a good standard. You get it wrong, it's painful. You get it right, it adds value. So I'd like to leave you with some questions to think about. I know we've got a 10-minute session to take some questions. Is training and competence at the core of any automotive standard? There's a question for you. Why would we not develop and implement a clearly defined garage standard which works for all of those stakeholders? Why wouldn't we do that? And the biggest question for me, why would we not raise the bar? Thank you.
I don't want to delay coffee too long, but I'm sure you'll have an interest in what Steve's been talking about, so we'll take a few minutes for questions. And then I'll exert my authority as chair to reduce the amount of time available for coffee. But a few questions first, if you have.
Any questions?
Good morning, Steve. Will you have a base in the UAE or in the Gulf?
Sorry, say that again?
Will you be based in the Gulf or will you have an office here?
It is likely we'll have an office here, but we have people on the ground here, and the way we operate is for approved centres. So a lot of the big business houses, the dealers, have got their own academies, and what we would like to do is talk to those and approve them for the qualifications and put the quality assurance in place. So the way we operate is very much through an approved centre network. So we have 600 centres around the globe. This is a market we would like to try and help. As we said, we're not for profit, but we're passionate about people, standards and professionalism. So we'd very much like to work with all stakeholders, whether that's schools, colleges, bringing youngsters into the sector, whether that's employers and small garages working within this new standard that's coming. We'd very much like to work with that. We have got a development team on the ground in the region, but it could well be we could have a base here at some stage.
Okay, thank you.
One more question, I think.
I see.
Hi.
You were talking about, standardization of garages, right? I understand in Dubai they're going to have single star, double star, 5-star categories of garages. If you were to do that, what would be the guidelines for each star categories?
Okay, I can't talk for government departments and I can't talk for the sector in Dubai. What I could say is what best practice looks like. So if you think about that journey we spoke about, you can't upskill everyone overnight. So I guess the star rating would be about how many people you've qualified and got professionally registered. So that would be the sliding scale that I would suggest. That said, there's some critical things here. You can't be part qualified to change brakes and be safe, can you? So there'll be some elements of the training and the competency testing that are a given that you can't star rate. You are either competent or not. But at the higher level, you could look at businesses and see how much training they do, how many people they've got qualified, so what that risk looks like. But as I said, we're only here to advise on skills. That's a government and an industry local discussion. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I don't want to delay coffee. Thank you very much indeed. So if we could break now for a coffee break, and if I could ask you kindly to come back to your seats at say 12:15, we'll make a start on the next session. Thanks very much.